Released in 2013 and directed by Derek Cianfrance, The Place Beyond the Pines is an ambitious and thoughtful multi-generational tragic saga with a stellar cast. It's a film that isn't afraid to swing for the fences, even if that might seem old-fashioned or outdated. This is a movie with big ideas and even bigger emotions. Emotions it proudly wears on its sleeves. It might be an independent film, but that doesn't mean it does things on a small scale. The movie is a powerful exploration of the weight of our actions, the choices we make when we're up against the wall, our mistakes, and how they impact our lives. But also the ripples mistakes cause, and how far they reverberate. It asks how much of our lives are predetermined. Is there even such a thing as a clean slate? Can we ever really outrun the mistakes of those that came before us? And like all great tragedies, a sense of doom hangs over the film, as if the characters' fates are already etched in stone, apparent to everyone but themselves. The movie tackles heavy themes like legacy, guilt, redemption, and masculinity. And while those are familiar themes, The Place Beyond the Pines uses them in powerful and moving ways. It also isn't afraid to take bold risks, and that's perhaps most evident in the way the film is structured and the fact that it isn't afraid to subvert audience expectations. When the film first hit theaters, there was understandably a level of secrecy around its plot, because watching it unfold is an integral part of the experience. That's why they try to keep some of the story elements under wraps. The reason for that is that the film's narrative structure, it wouldn't have the same impact if it didn't take you by surprise. That being said, the film's been out for almost a decade, and this is a think piece on it, so there will be spoilers. Even though the marketing and trailers put Ryan Gosling front and center, The Place Beyond the Pines isn't a star vehicle for the actor. It also is an intense, action-heavy, cat-and-mouse game between Ryan Gosling and Bradley Cooper. The movie's more of a triptych, or story divided into three distinct sections. Although Ryan Gosling's character plays a central part of the film, he only appears in the first portion. And even though it's impossible to know for sure, I don't think it's unreasonable to assume that the narrative surprises hurt the film's box office performance. I can imagine the audience's confusion when a character they thought was a film star died pretty early on. I can see people getting annoyed or even feeling duped. It's definitely a risky move to push the big-name actors aside to hand over the emotional climax to young, relatively unknown actors. But at least from a storytelling perspective, the choice definitely paid off. Watching one protagonist exit as another one takes center stage can initially seem disorienting. The change from one chapter to another can feel abrupt, as if an entirely new movie started, but that works well with the themes of the story. We'd all like to think of ourselves as protagonists, but in reality, we're just bit players in life's larger narrative. In an instant and unexpectedly, a life can end, but the consequences of our actions linger on, and our presence hangs over those we leave behind. The story, or at least the first one, centers on Luke, a motorcycle stuntman played winningly by Ryan Gosling. Drifting from town to town with the traveling fair, he's a sort of small-time celebrity who casually enjoys one-night stands before leaving for his next stop. He's a rolling stone, not tethered to anyone or anything. That is until this particular night, when after the show he's approached by a woman named Romina, played by Eva Mendes. The last time Luke was in town, they had a fling. They briefly reconnect and even share a nice moment, but she doesn't see a future with Luke and tells him she has someone in her life, expecting that they'll once again go their separate ways. But when Luke finds out that she had his son while he was away, he quits his job with the fair and decides to stick around, hoping to be the father that he never had. But in order to provide for his family, he needs to find a job. And after a chance encounter with a mechanic named Robin, played by Ben Mendelsohn, Luke gets a job fixing cars and a place to stay. Unfortunately, like countless film characters before him, Luke realizes that playing by the rules isn't going to get him the kind of money he needs. Perhaps sensing an opportunity in Luke's desperation, Robin suggests that they rob banks. Luke is initially skeptical, but Robin convinces him that with Luke's motorcycle skills, they can pull it off, and just like that, they begin robbing banks. And for a brief moment, it seems like the family Luke wants is within his reach. However, it doesn't take long for things to go wrong. In one of his bank heists, sets him on a collision course with Avery Cross, a rookie cop played by Bradley Cooper. Their fateful showdown brings Luke's career as a bank robber to a predictable but still tragic end. This also marks the end of the first section, which many people consider the film's highlight. And that's hardly surprising since the chapter is exciting, entertaining, and genuinely moving. In fact, it could easily have been stretched to a feature-length film. Ryan Gosling, who in my opinion is easily one of the best actors currently working, gives a breathtakingly moving performance. Often we focus on actors who give flashy performances filled with long-winded speeches. But I believe there's something to be said about an actor who can do so much with silence. Ryan Gosling has a habit of playing tight-lipped characters, but he always manages to evoke a sense of warmth and humanity lying just beneath the surface. The movie never reveals a lot about who Luke is or how he came to be, and yet, because of Ryan Gosling's understated yet powerful performance, we understand exactly who he is. We feel for him and understand his motivations. His desperation is palpable, and even though we can see the common tragedy looming over every frame, we can't help but hope against hope that he'll somehow manage to score a happy ending. And although Luke and Romina's romance is doomed from the start, the chemistry between them is undeniable. You can't help but mourn the love that could have been. And the always great Ben Mendelsohn rounds out the supporting cast with a warm, entertaining performance. But just like that, the spotlight shifts to Avery Cross, the young cop who shot Luke down. Their encounter left Avery injured, but also turned him into a local hero. Avery's father, a judge and politician, sees his injury as an opportunity to leverage into a career in politics. But Avery wants to carve out his own path, so he sticks it out as a cop. Unfortunately, he gets pulled into corruption by an intimidating officer played by Ray Liotta. They, along with a third officer, illegally search Romina's house, looking for the money they believe Luke gave her. As they search for the money in the crib Luke bought, Avery has to hold the baby whose father he killed. This brings Avery face to face with the consequences of his action and fills him with guilt and shame that he buries. We also see that Avery isn't as different from Luke as he initially seemed. He too is a man who has lost his way and sees one bad choice lead to another until he finds himself against the wall. Although he knows he has to do something, he's just as scared to do the right thing as Luke was about doing the wrong thing. And like Luke, Avery also tries to give Romina money. Both men's actions seemed governed by what they believed they should do, and they both eventually face the consequences of their actions. Even though Bradley Cooper isn't as captivating as Ryan Gosling, he still gives an excellent, multifaceted performance. On the other hand, although Ray Liotta is entertaining, his performance is pretty much exactly what you'd expect, and Rose Byrne as Avery's wife barely registers. The story itself isn't as engaging as the previous chapter, but it works really well as part of the larger narrative. It explores the very idea of heroism and how the system tends to force good people to do bad things in a thought-provoking and moving way. And finally, the last section moves the story forward 15 years, and it focuses on Luke's son Jason and Avery's son AJ. The two find themselves in the same high school and are drawn to one another. They quickly become friends, but it doesn't take long for things to go wrong. Jason also meets Robin, who tells him a little bit about his father, but also who killed him. Then one night, while at a party at AJ's house, Jason notices a picture of Avery on the wall. When Jason finds out that AJ's father killed his, their already fractured friendship is truly broken. Dane DeHaan as Jason, Luke's son, gives a stunning, impactful performance. The actor, who resembles a young Leonardo DiCaprio, instills pathos into Jason in a sense that he's wise beyond his years. However, you also get the feeling that he's just a kid who wants to know his father. Unfortunately, Emery Cohen, who plays Avery's son AJ, he's fine. He sort of just gets the job done without leaving any sort of impression. Taken on its own, the chapter could be seen as the weakest of the three, but in the context of the rest of the story, it provides a powerful and profoundly moving coda. It brings the story full circle, and the father's legacies crash down on the sons. But it also hints at the possibility of breaking the cycle and starting over. The film focuses on a relatively small, violent event that isn't particularly noteworthy on its own. It's the kind of thing we usually just skim in a newspaper, But here, it's put under a microscope so that every tiny detail is blown to epic, practically Shakespearean proportions. Even split-second decisions can have dire consequences that stretch out over generations. But it isn't all doom and gloom. It's clear that Derek Cianfrance cares about the characters and makes the viewers care too. Amidst all the tragedy, there are also brief moments of happiness and hope. Of course, that makes it all the more tragic when things do inevitably go wrong. It speaks to the inevitable, sometimes cruel march of time. As much as we like to stay in a moment, it always has to end, and we have to keep moving forward even if we don't want to. And like with Blue Valentine, Derek Cianfrance creates a nuanced portrayal of working class people that call to mind a Bruce Springsteen album. The film focuses on blue-collar characters trying to improve their lives and those of their loved ones, even if they go about it the wrong way. Some of the boss's favorite topics like heartbreak, petty crime, and of course daddy issues are on full display. And if the connection wasn't clear enough, one of his songs plays during a scene. Although its 2.5-hour running time might seem off-putting to some, the movie never overstays its welcome. It's a bold film that declares its grand ambitions right at the outset and never plays it safe. There's something genuinely epic about it. The Place Beyond the Pines feels like a sprawling, grand novel that just happened to be filmed instead of published. If the movie stumbles a bit, it would be in the third act, when certain important events hinge on convenient coincidences. It requires an amount of suspension of disbelief that might be too much for some viewers. However, the moving performances, powerful themes, bold narrative choices, beautiful cinematography, and haunting score all come together to form an expansive, profoundly emotional epic about fathers and sons that soars even when its ambitions exceed its grasp.